Shabbat shalom, everyone. So I was doing a little experiment on the morning that I was writing this sermon. I opened up Facebook and I did a quick scroll through my news feed, 30 seconds, tops. And within those 30 seconds, I wanted to see what kind of information was coming to me and what I was going to be seeing on my news feed. And here's what I saw in those 30 seconds. 3 different posts celebrating children's birthdays with lots of toys, lots of cake, and lots of smiles. 2 posts celebrating job changes or promotions, both of which had hundreds of likes and dozens of comments. 2 posts celebrating the impressive weight loss journeys of 2 individuals. And finally, this has nothing to do with the point that I'm about to make, but I really need to include it, a friend who made a post about how much he loves potatoes, which I thought was appropriate and just needed to be included in here. So it was just a quick little experiment, but it was solid confirmation. And if I opened up Instagram, I'm sure that I would have had a similar outcome. If I would have opened up Twitter, probably a completely different sermon topic entirely. I'll save that for a different Shabbat. But the point here is not one that is original. I will say that from the onset here. This is not an original thing that I am about to say, because we know that social media is a peculiar creature that, while giving us some valuable tools to connect and to stay connected to one another, also carries with it incalculably destructive influences of inferiority, of shame, and even in depression. And I think we all know that. And I think we've known that. And then Frances Hogan, the whistleblower who exposed so much of Facebook's own internal data confirming these truths, took what we've known and plopped it right down in front of our noses so that we can't really ignore it anymore. And we shouldn't. That little experiment I did, 30 seconds on a weekday morning, gave me a lot of feelings. 30 seconds. I was happy for my friends, for sure, especially for the one who likes potatoes. Thrilled for him. But I also felt those pangs of envy, of inferiority, of that dangerous process of comparing our lives to the lives of others. And that was 30 seconds. Those kids in their birthday pictures look like they haven't stopped smiling for years. And that is probably because, this is my internal monologue here, right? Probably because they have dads who are 1,000,000 times better at fatherhood than I am, and know exactly how to make their kids happy all the time. Their kids are never crying, I promise you. The 2 folks who wrote about their promotion and their change in their career, I'm sure that their workplaces, again, my interior monologue, are utopias. And every day they wake up feeling deeply appreciated, challenged, and fulfilled because, well, that's what their posts seem to say. And my friends who've lost weight and are feeling good about themselves and their journeys, yasher koach to them, of course, but clearly they have more willpower, more self-control, and probably more time to exercise than me, right? Clearly. We know how it goes. And we know that blaming social media, pointing the finger directly at social media for all of this, isn't going to really get us to the ikar, to really get us to the essence of this matter. Because at the end of the day, in our heart of hearts, I think just as much as we know how damaging social media is in this regard, we also know that the underlying issue that we're talking about lies with us. Within that painful truth that while we like to point fingers at the people, the companies, the politicians who make our lives worse, we struggle to admit, or sometimes to even recognize, that the one doing the most harm to us is us. Which isn't to say that those companies, those people, those politicians don't bear responsibility. They do. And we should fight to ensure that we live in a society where those who have power use it to make all of us better rather than to harm or divide. 100%. We know that to be true as well. But at the same time, without any paradox, we also know that the fight that starts here, the fight that transcends those exterior elements, is not just important, it's critical to living our best lives. Lives of meaning, lives of goodness, lives of fulfillment. There are a lot of commentaries about our parasha this morning. A lot of interpretations of this famous wrestling match that takes place as Yaakov Avinu, as Jacob, our patriarch, journeys back home after serving his uncle Lavan and building a family with Leah and Rachel, and prepares to see the brother he wronged years ago. Dozens, hundreds of commentaries about this sacred wrestling match. Classic commentaries say that Jacob wrestled with an angel, or with an avatar of God, God's self. That this was a test to challenge Jacob's worthiness as a patriarch. Rashi takes it in a little bit of a different vein and says that this angel, this divine force, is actually a spiritual representation of Esau, of Jacob's brother, and that this mystical skirmish is necessary for the reunion of the two brothers. A reunion that takes place the following day. Before they can really reunite, before they can bury the past behind them, they need to have this spiritual wrestling match. That's what Rashi has to say about our parasha this morning. But almost all of the commentators take away from this story that this fight, this wrestling match, this struggle needs to happen in order for Jacob to insist on this last bit of the encounter. The part where this entity is trying to escape, but Yaakov Avinu holds on to them tightly and says, I will not release you until you bless me. Lo ashalecha ki im berachtani. I will not release you until you bless me. For our commentators, this fight is necessary so that Jacob can be blessed by God, by Esau, the spirit of his past, by someone or something other than himself, someone or something outside of him. But I don't think that that's what this story is about. I think what makes the story so powerful, so remarkable, is that through all of Jacob's life, he has been the recipient of the will of others. Sometimes as a beneficiary of that will, and sometimes as a victim of that will. His mother helps convince him to steal his brother's blessing from his father. She also convinces him to leave home rather than deal with the fallout of that act. He's taken advantage of by his uncle, tricked into marrying Leah rather than Rachel, then tricked into additional years of work to claim his rightful bride. But through it all, God has favored him and has granted him parnasa, he's granted him financial success, he's granted him the benefit of birthright and the promise of brit, the promise of covenant. But if we take a step back and look not at the narrative in the third person, but look at Jacob's story through his words, through his narrative, the focus is not on those blessings. It's not on the mystical encounters with the God of his fathers, with the promise of birthright of generations to follow in his name. Rather, he seems to be consumed by Lavan and by Esau, by the uncle who wronged him, and by the brother who was wronged by him. Until that night. After that night, everything changes. That night, Jacob wrestles. And when dawn breaks, the plans change. He is reunited with his brother. They kiss, they embrace, they weep. But rather than returning to their father's house, which is the original plan, Jacob tells Esau to go ahead. And he doesn't go back home, nor does he go back to the house of Lavan. He goes to a place that is new, a place that is not marred by the impact of others, a place that is his own. And there, God speaks to him and blesses him again. And he calls that place Bethel, the dwelling place, the house of the divine. That night, the night when everything changes, Jacob wrestles not with his brother, not with an angel testing him. Jacob wrestles with himself. He wrestles with who he is and who he believes himself to be. And the latter, the one he assumes himself to be, is the parts of him so consumed by the favor, by the hate, by the mistreatment, by the envy of others, those obsessions that have weighed him down for so long, that they strike him and make him limp. But through his wrestling, it is his true self, his authentic self, free from the mire of grudge and comparison, that emerges triumphant. And with that victory, we can understand that the blessing he receives, remember, do not release me until you offer me a blessing. The blessing he receives is not a new blessing at all. It is the one that he had all along. But now is the first time that he can see it, that he can really see it. Jacob is not newly blessed. He simply recognizes that there's never been a time when he wasn't. Facebook, Instagram, television, all of these things are really good at telling us what and who we are not. But ultimately, no matter their influence, it is we ourselves who decide if we live in the shadows of what we don't have, or if we live in the blessings of what we do. The great sage J. Cole, it's a hip-hop reference that I assumed would fall flat. A little bummed that I was correct in that evaluation. Ryan Giles, you got me? Okay, a little bit. Anyway, J. Cole has these great lyrics where he says, I feel like I'm going to have to translate these a little bit too, so I will. Always going to be a whip that's better than the one you got. There's always going to be a car better than the ones you have. There's always going to be some clothes that's fresher than the ones you rock. Someone's always going to have nicer clothes than you. There's always going to be a girl that's better out there on the tours. Boy, you ain't never going to be happy till you love yours. He's right. He's right. J. Cole's right. And Yaakov, post-WrestleMania, is right. No life is better than yours. No life is better than yours. And it's not just important for us to understand that, it's vital for our happiness, for our Yiddishkeit. It's vital for us. And we deserve to be who we are, because that is a gift that was given to us and to just us. And as we wrestle, not with the outside, not with what we are supposed to be, but we wrestle with ourselves, then I think we can recognize what a beautiful gift that is.